I'd like to talk about Rain Man for a few minutes. What would you say was your single greatest achievement with that production?
I've never thought about it that way. I think I watched it again yesterday because I wanted to be able to talk about it, and I hadn't seen it in years. And I was really surprised at how emotional it was. And I think that that's something, if I was proud of something, it was more a shared proud of how the crew and the cast worked together on that film. It was really something to behold. And we found out about halfway through the film that about 80% of people working on the film had either a direct in their family mental illness or they knew someone well who had a mental illness. So it brought this incredible level of sensitivity into everything that was going on, from the way the focus pullers were working with the way obviously the actors were working, but they were surrounded in a really kind of unusual dome of people that were all focused on trying to bring out the best they could so that they could show Dustin's illness in the most humane and healing way they could.
Yeah.
To me, even to me, or at least when it came out, of course, I was an not even adolescent or a child, but it was one of the first times I watched a film and said, "This is the first time that something's ever shown me, any literature has ever shown me that visual literature, for that matter, that." A person with a mental illness isn't just, they're not just dumb. There are things that they're great at. It's like, okay, because this is missing, they're hyper great at that. And so it made it cool to be like, wait a minute, they're smarter than me than this. I'll never be able to do that math problem no matter what school I go to. But yet you look at this person, you think that they're lesser than and they're more than. So that's something that I love. Me as a child, that made me feel great about that. Now let me ask you this. Such an iconic director such as Barry Levinson, at the moment, what was it? Okay, what was it like to work with him? But in the moment, did you even realize who you were working with and what this would be?
I don't think anybody realized what it would be. We knew what we hoped it would be. That's the first thing. I was hired by Sidney Pollack. Sidney Pollack was supposed to be the director. So when I made my deal with Jerry Mullen, who was Sidney Pollack's co-producer, as to be an associate producer and the AD, I thought I was going to be working on a Sidney Pollack film. 2 or 3 weeks before production started, Sidney back because he could not solve the script problems that were inherent in it and that needed change. He couldn't come up with the ideas, and I think Tom and Dustin had hard out dates, and so we had to shoot on on our scheduled days. Couldn't push the film. So one day we'd started prepping, and one day Sydney comes to us. He says, "Okay, guys, I'm leaving soon. I want you to come out with me and get in this van. We're going to Barry Levinson's house in Bel Air." And so, the producers, the camera people, the key grip, the gaffer, me, we all get in this van and we drive to Barry Levinson's house, and we walk into Barry Levinson's living room, and we all shake hands with Barry and sit down. And his wife, who is incredibly pregnant, is bringing us like coffee and stuff. And we sit there for an hour and talk with Barry. And Barry, to his great credit and bravery, accepted the entire crew. And he never worked with any of us. So there's one thing about Barry Levinson that I bet not many people know. And he was the perfect person for this story because he understood both those guys. He understood what Dustin was trying to do. Even if he didn't understand the illness he was trying to portray, he understood what Dustin was trying to pull off. And he understood the change that Tom had to have through the course of the show, which was basically from being someone you really wouldn't want to be around to someone who had their heart opened. There were rewrites going on the way through. He liked to work fast, and sometimes it was too fast. And I've been debating ever since I got your note about whether I should tell this story, because I've never told anybody that's not a personal friend, and because I don't like to get into stuff like that about but I'm telling you because it's a case in point for being an AD and being a director and being a star. The camera people came to me at one point early on the show, and they said, can you help us? Barry is going too fast. Sometimes Dustin pulls something that we've never seen before and somewhere we're not ready for, and we're not hitting our focus stuff. We're close, but we're buzzing them. And Barry wants to move on. He said, no, it's good enough. We got to go. And it's not good enough. We want to make this as good as we can. What can we do? So, okay, I'm going to say it. So I went to Dustin and I said, look, here's what's happening. And I'd worked with Dustin on Tootsie, so I had a relationship with him. And I said, what do you think about if I work out a signal, if the camera people tell me they had a problem and I work out a signal with you, would you go and ask Barry for another take? Because he'll never say no to you. And he said, absolutely. And he said, let's go and talk to Tom. So we went and talked to Tom. Tom said, absolutely. And that's how we got around something that, you know, that could have been a problem.
Yeah.
We didn't use it a lot, very honest. We used it about 5 times, but those are the kinds of things that come up on a film that people don't talk about. It isn't a slam on Barry. It isn't a slam on anybody, but it's how you make, it's how everybody's trying to pull for the same thing, which is to make it good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I'm the kind of director that, like, after working with so many different people, a variety of people in crew, I realize it's hard to find that balance and know when you're working with, is this somebody that's just a perfectionist and it will never be good enough, or is this something that we actually need to do again? And making those decisions on the fly when you're looking at the big picture as a director, knowing what we still have left to do, it's really easy to just know we got to move on and it's good enough.
Especially if you like the performance.
Yeah.
You know, and oh my God, that's what I wanted. You know, we buzzed him. You know, what do you do? Anyway, he was very facile. You know, he was very. He didn't get heavy on people a lot. He kept it light. You had to listen to his words though. If he wanted something changed and he was telling you definitely, it had the nice tone to it, but it was you had to listen to the subtext and work with it. I liked him really a lot. He didn't know me from anybody. I could have been some guy off the street. He didn't know who I was or what I did or how I did it. So it was kind of hands off for a while, which I expected and understood. But I think by the time we all got rolling, we had a good relationship. I liked him a lot, and obviously was amazed by his talent, amazed by his writing talent, and by his work with actors.
And speaking of working with actors, I was reading that Dustin Hoffman, he is just a treasure trove of interesting stories for the shenanigans on set. So the Vegas scene, I read that he kept slipping off to play blackjack, and it was eventually halting the production when crew would have to go find him. So they eventually he had somebody that was hired to just watch him in between takes.
Yeah, so we put a PA in charge.
I'm curious, how do you navigate those situations? And because he had to notice, sorry, I now have a babysitter, so there's something like that comes up. But was there ever a time that it felt like somebody was more trouble than they were worth?
Well, never any more trouble than they were worth. They could be trouble, but that's part of what you do. So Dustin, is playing this guy. He's very inward, this character, and he's sitting at the table under the lights in this crazy focus wherever the hell he went for that character. And he changed the lighting around, and he had to let it out. So he would disappear. He'd put the stand-ins in. He'd go off to the side, and then after a while, it's like, oh, guys, where's Dustin? I'd hear on the radio, not sure. So after that happened a few times, he would go off to the tables and just jump in, do a few hands, enthrall people, of course, and then we'd get him back. So we put a PA with him. He'd stand way back where he wasn't intruding on what he was doing. We kept it all low key. He knew that somebody had to, he wasn't trying to ditch us. He had to go and get some air. On Tootsie, talking about going into roles, and maybe you can't use this, but I just want to tell you because it's so cool and how deep he went into that character of Dorothy, the woman. I caught him shopping with his wife on a weekend, dressed as Tootsie. He would dress up as a woman and go around with his wife into all these places where women shopped and the dressing rooms and everything, so he would understand what was going on. He loved it.
Now that's method acting.
Yeah.
That is method. Kids out there, that if you want to commit, you got to commit.
I agree.
One of the things are the stigmas out there for people who love film, but they don't want to make them. They just love watching them. One of the things that, at least when you first growing up, people think that films are shot just like, hey, this scene, that scene. Like, oh, I love that story. They must have, like, from beginning to end, this is what they've done. But we all know in the industry that's not how it happens. 98% of the time, that's not what happens. So let's talk about Rain Man. It was shot mostly in sequential order, which is not the norm, and it actually followed the road trip. It follows the road trip that the characters take. So let me ask you this: was that more or less challenging than shooting a film out of order?
Either way would have been a challenge, but it had obvious benefits to everybody. And that was that the characters had a chance to evolve in sequence. And since it was a script a lot of times in progress and characters a lot of times in progress, Dustin kept freaking out that he didn't have the character yet. He didn't have the character. We'd be 2 weeks in. He was like, I don't have him. I don't know what I'm doing with this. I can't find him, And so as we shot our way across the country, they gradually came in, and Tom came in as this brash kind of guy, and then watching Dustin, interacting with Dustin, watching Dustin go through the changes his character went through. And then we all evolved as a crew and interacting with them. So to me, shooting in basically in order was fantastic, and it was a godsend. If we've exploded the script the way, as you were saying, it happens on so many shows for so many different reasons. But on this one, we decided, I don't know if it was a decision that was made before I got there or however, but that's how I boarded it. That's how we shot it. One thing about it, if you're interested, at the end of the show, now we're back in Los Angeles. We've been shooting out in Palm Springs, and we're shooting the stuff in the car dealership and everything. And Dustin is unhappy about a scene that we shot in Cincinnati because now that he had grown into his character, he was looking back at it and thinking about it, and it was like, that wasn't, I want to make it better. We went back to Cincinnati and reshot that coffee shop scene where they order pancakes and the toothpicks go on the floor. Mm-hmm. We went back and shot it, and I think a couple of other things too. I think the walk down from the home where he was and stuff. We reshot a couple of things like that because he felt as though he had the way the guy walked, and the way he reacted to things better.
That would be the definition of an A-lister, talking about having cachet. Hey guys, you know what we shot 2 weeks ago? Let's go back and do it again. Now we're going.
And it's somebody that, like, I imagine that he's one of those people that the performance could always be improved upon, and that's where, as the director, you have to find that, like, when is it time to move on and put the foot down.
It's true. He didn't put it to people though as an ultimatum kind of thing at all. They saw some of the cut footage, and he told Barry, he just said, I know I can do this better. And it's a pivotal scene, right? Yeah. So, so we did it. And I can't remember whether we came in within the budget or whether that was more money that was given to us, but we went back. We all went back. Couldn't believe it. We're back there. We're like, I cannot believe we're back in this coffee shop.
So just watching the movie the night before, what is your favorite scene in Rain Man?
I think the scene in the motel where Tom finds out that Raymond is Rain Man. The way it was played that night, it had everybody just like blown out, because they got really emotional with it. And we shot that in sequence also. And it was just, we knew we had something. at that point. I think at that scene, we people would look around and went, "Wow, you know, I get it," you know, because it woke Tom up, and it showed you a picture of Dustin the way he used to be, the way his character used to be before he had all these problems. So the Vegas stuff, it was Vegas. We were all just having a blast. I mean, I saw our prop man win thousands of dollars at the craps table. He actually, we put it in his retirement. He's using his per diem and gambling as per diem, and he was like really good. And we'd stand around and watch him. It looked like, what we were trying to do with Dustin and Tom, he was doing it at the craps table. I like the family in the farm where they had to knock on the door and get him in to watch his TV program before he freaked. Those kids, there were 6 little kids there. That was, well, you can imagine, trying to get them all to focus and stay with it. And Dustin's doing what he's doing, which is the kids are like, what? And Tom Cruise is there, P.S. So it was interesting and sweet, very sweet. Dustin and Tom were really sweet with the kids, and the kids, gradually relaxed and just became themselves. And we worked with them a little bit, and I think it came off. They didn't cut them into them as much as I thought they would, but I liked that scene too.
Doing the rewatch the other night, because you said you want to be able to talk about it, was there a scene or a moment that you thought of, like, hey, we're behind the scenes, like a fond memory? I know we talked about your favorite scene, but just a fond memory. Maybe it was working with a crew member or somebody who wasn't supposed to be on set, or a situation, a fire you put out that no one knows about. Was there a fond memory that came to mind watching that?
Well, I can think of one. There are 2. That come to mind fast. One is when we got to Las Vegas, Barry realized that he needed some more reaction from Dustin in the convertible as they came across country. So he said, look, take Dustin, take the car, and have him set up a camera and go out and drive around and let Dustin act. You and Dustin just talk in the car and just drive around and get some stuff. That's what we did. I couldn't believe it. So Dustin and I are out in this car with an Airflex and a mag of film, and we drove down toward the dam down there below Las Vegas, and Dustin would just trip on, or I'd see something, I'd say, is that something that you would trip on, the reflections of it? Yeah. And so he'd do it, and so we just spent this afternoon doing these little pickup shots. I think a few of them are in the film, but that wasn't the point. The point was we're just 2 guys out there trying to do this thing and make it better. So obviously, how could I not love that? For laughs, the whole freak out that Tom did about the underwear and on the highway in the middle of nowhere, I laughed my ass off at that. They were so funny. And Dustin just goated the hell out of him, just got his goat so bad, just got him so spun, that when he jumped out of the car, he was really freaking out, And then the one other one was the booth scene when they're in the phone booth. That was in the middle of Oklahoma, in the middle of nowhere. I'm not kidding you. There was nothing around for miles. And we pulled up, and we had a couple of cops with us, and we started setting up, and all of a sudden, cars, it was a 4-way intersection, cars started appearing and parking in the fields and, going through the intersection and finding a place to park. And suddenly there's like 80 people there. And somehow the word had leaked out that we were filming, and they all wanted to come and see, Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. So Dustin is very outgoing. He jumped out of the trailer and said hello to everybody and signed autographs and was just so dear. And Tom wouldn't come out. And I think he was busy. It wasn't, I think. But Dustin, being Dustin, grabbed everybody and went over and surrounded Tom's trailer and said this chant, "Tom Cruise, come out. Tom Cruise, come out." All these people are saying this, and finally Tom comes and they burst into applause, and he's like grinning, and he's signing autographs, and Dustin goes by me, so I'm teaching him how to be a star. He's so cute.
Oh, I love the story about going out and shooting with Dustin Hoffman because I could see how that would be. Like, I never imagined that on a big production like that, there's those intimate moments where it's like when you, like, to me, if that was me, I'd be like, this is why I got into film. This is what I enjoyed. Just that creative process on a like without all of the bells and whistles and
Right.
everything that comes with a production.
When I did, when we did Tootsie, I mean, that character of that woman was indelible. I mean, people just fell in love with her. She was so cool. And the crew, I mean, she'd hang out with the crew and like, he was just unbelievable. And so on Rain Man, we in the beginning in Cincinnati, we had a couple of minutes one day, and I was in the trailer and I was talking with Dustin, and we brought up Tootsie. We were talking about Tootsie, and we were talking about some of the people and because Tootsie was a very, very tense, difficult, argumentative, pressure-packed show, but we were working about the fun parts and the cool stuff. And as we were talking, Dustin, from being enthusiastic and laughing, just not suddenly, over the course of about 10 minutes, just got really quiet. And finally, I just said, what's up? What's up? He says, oh, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I guess sound kind of weird, but he says, sometimes I really miss Dorothy. He really missed that character. And I couldn't have agreed with him more.
That was a solid Hoffman impression as well.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
PAD, post actors depression. You can't leave the role alone.
That's incredible. Because how long was Rain Man after Tootsie? Like how many?
Well, Rain Man was 88. I think Tootsie was like 84. So it was like 4 or 5 years.
So 4 years later, he's still kind of like the character is still in him somewhere.
Yes. Very definitely.
I hope nobody gives him the role of a serial killer.
Yeah, because
I said that to him.
He commits.
I said that to him. I told him, I said, I am so glad you're not playing an axe murderer in this show. He laughed.
Find us in all these links. It's coming up right now.
Why don't you subscribe? It'll last longer.